The following Fox 4 presentation is brought to you by Nissan.
So we're here in the sports office just naturally conversing with our guest, Dan McDowell. Dan, you had no idea TV was this glamorous, right?
It's wonderful. Look at this place. Oh, look at that. Does Cumulus own Fox 4 too?
Yes, it is Ticket Tuesday with Dan McDowell in studio tonight for Free for All. I'm Mike Ducey. Dan will step in here in a moment, the self-described sports humorist, ranking his top stand-up comedians. We even talk a little sports with the Bad Radio host, and that means some Cowboys, of course. Much of that having to do with the aftermath of the Cowboys' loss to Houston and Jason Garrett's decision to punt in overtime. But this team has bigger issues, most of them involving this problematic offense. On the radio today, our Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said it's been years since the Cowboys had a true #1 receiver. A shot at Dez, but probably true. One of the guys trying to fill those shoes, Allen Hurns, had earlier said that the receivers are getting open. Some took that as a shot at Dak Prescott. Today, Hurns tried to clarify.
I want to emphasize this, when me and Cole came out and said that the receivers are getting separation, that wasn't no shot at anyone. We just want to let people know that it's something that goes on across the board. It's not just Dak making the throw. Sometimes it's protection issues. Sometimes it is he giving us an opportunity and we don't come down with it. That's the game of football. Everything is not going to be flawless, but we just got to get on the same page, and across the board, play to the standard that we're capable of.
It is Ticket Tuesday, and this week's guest from Bad Radio, Dan McDowell. Dan, welcome into Free for All.
Mike, great to see you.
Good to see you. As you know, it airs at 10:30 weeknights here on Fox 4. I heard you earlier today on the Ticket pretending as though you didn't know the time slot for the show.
That's right. That's part of the hilarious delivery that we try to bring daily. From, I'm not sure what time we're on either. Sometime in the mid-afternoon.
Noon to 3 ends up being 3:30.
Yeah.
More like, speaking of comedy, and we're going to talk a little bit about your stand-up comedy career coming up in a few minutes.
It was glorious.
Your top stand-up comics. We'll discuss your career at the Ticket, and we'll get into that and kind of the early stages of your career. But first of all, let's go back to Little Dan, growing up in Ohio. Tell us what we're seeing here and what it was like for young Dan growing up in the greater Cleveland-Akron area, maybe?
That first one was much like Tiger Woods. I was a prodigy golfer. And you've seen in many of those, you'll see a variety of pants. That's you? That hopefully is Easter. And that was lots of hair. That is the bicentennial year, 1976. I was in 2nd grade. And there
was back when you loved America. Yeah, okay.
That's right. And that's back when I loved the Cleveland Indians as a young Cleveland Indians fan with the old-timey shirt there. Certainly in some other big celebration. Those are the 4 photos I have from my childhood. That's all I have. Like now we have 30 a month for each of our kids, but now...
I don't want to get into the scarring incidents that led you to having just 4 childhood photos.
Right.
Let's move beyond that. We'll talk a little bit of sports, then we'll get back into early Dan the comic, and a lot of other stuff. Real quickly, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of people have been talking about Garrett punting on 4th and 1 in Houston in overtime the other night. Your radio partner, Bob Sturm, was very much against it. Norm could justify it. Where do you come down on this? At the time, I sort of understood why he did it, but in true second-guessing fashion, the more I thought about it, the more I hated the decision. You?
Well, as I was watching it, it was more of a, like Bob asked, was I screaming? And no, I was shaking my head. And I feel like that's just the Cowboy way, or at least the Garrett way, right? The 8-8 Garrett way feels like that's the way they run things. They're very conservative, and they'll, live to try another down, and let's just hope. We base a lot of the, end-of-game decisions on hope. Hopefully we'll get the ball back. Hopefully our defense can get a stop, and hopefully we can win on the last second, which seems to be a lot different than, the newer NFL coaches. Your Sean McVay or whatnot is the let's go take it. Let's not hope for it. And then inevitably we're going to get criticized when we don't get it. But that's something we feel confident. We feel confident in the reasons that we're doing this.
It's maybe easier to justify in the post-game news conference, maybe,
yeah,
if you've gone for it and not gotten it. It's just when you build your entire team about around being able to run the football, it seems odd to not go for it there. To me, the most significant thing to come out of the weekend was Jerry Jones' comments. Am I reading too much into that?
No.
I think it was a rare moment of true honesty where he said, yeah, you needed to have a little more aggressiveness there.
Listening to that Monday, I thought that's a different Jerry than I've ever heard before. He's since backtracked that a little bit, but I've really never heard him second-guess Jason Garrett. And I feel like that's the only way you will see Jason Garrett change, is when he knows Jerry Jones wants him to change. And for Jerry to say that was a moment to take a risk. We were clearly not the better team on the field, and we probably weren't going to win that game. We shouldn't have been in position to win. So at that time, let's go for it. Let's try to get this win now, because we're probably not the better team right now.
I'm wrong about a lot of things having to do with sports, Dan. I don't know if you've noticed that. And I'm starting to worry that maybe I was wrong about Dak Prescott, because I thought the guy was the total package. After that first year, just the way he handles himself, his work ethic, his intelligence, his demeanor, his leadership. I never thought that I would ever be in a position where I had to look at him and actually ask, is this guy an NFL quarterback in terms of on-field physical skills? Is that an overreaction, or is that a reasonable question to ask at this point?
I feel like I'm right in step with you. That's the exact way I felt with him when he was a rookie. I feel like, though, we got to slow down. You know, he's still a third-year player. He's still figuring this thing out. Romo wasn't even on the field in his third year, right? So he's obviously been thrown into the fire. He's going through a lot of things, and you'll see him make mistakes that you're like, man, a young quarterback makes those mistakes. Well, yeah, he's a young quarterback.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think this jury's still out. I guess you got to make a decision pretty soon, right? After next year is when contract time would come up. So,
and, you know, traditionally the deal would be done with 1 year to go. So, you know, it may even be sooner than that. And I've heard you guys talk a lot about whether it's Dak, whether it's the receivers. And one of you guys on the show mentioned it is allowed to have one of your receivers make a difficult catch from time to time, and you're not seeing a lot of that going on with the Cowboys right now.
His accuracy is not Aikman, you know. He's not putting it right there. But if you're referencing like the Tavon Austin pass from the other day, I thought for sure Tavon Austin should have had that. Not that you should hold him to the same standard as some great receivers in the league, but you see those catches made all the time. So he was under duress. He was running. He threw the ball. It was a bit high. Tavon Austin's a bit low, you know, as far as his height. But he should have had that ball for sure.
All right, much more with Dan McDowell from The Ticket. He will emulate one of his favorite Fox 4 News segments, and he'll ask me a few questions in the process. That's coming up. Back on Free for All with The Ticket's Dan McDowell on Ticket Tuesday. There he is, looking slim and trim. We have a question from a Twitter follower asking about your weight loss plan. That's coming up, though.
Oh, that's a tease.
That's a tease right there. You're a Cleveland area guy. What's your earliest sports memory? When did you first start to follow the teams in the Cleveland area?
It was actually when Baker Mayfield led them to victory over the Jets. No, actually.
Well, there he is, now that you mentioned it.
Oh, yeah, that's my first. Oh, that was the game. I'll never forget it. I've been a long-time Browns fan.
Do you have hope, since we're rolling this now? Do you have hope that
yes,
this is the real deal?
Yes,
and how many times have you had that hope that ended up being a false hope in the last 20 years?
Many, and that's why I kind of stopped believing. Manziel made me believe again for like a minute, because they drafted him because a homeless guy outside told the owner they should draft Manziel. So that seemed like a good plan at the time. But I feel like some Cowboys fans feel when it comes to this team. I don't want them to do too well because they might hang on to their coach. And I don't like their coach. So I feel like once we get Lincoln Riley up there to Cleveland, and I know Cowboy fans want him here too, but we're going to take him up there, reunited with Baker, and you know, nothing could go wrong.
Something tells me Hugh Jackson may be out before Jason Garrett is. What was your first experience in broadcasting?
In broadcasting?
Very first job?
Well, I guess college, and then out of college I did some high school play-by-play, things like that.
Do you know, even as a young kid, that you wanted to get into radio?
I think so, because would listen to the radio falling asleep, I listened to a sports talk guy named Pete Franklin. Who,
on 3WE in Cleveland.
Yeah,
I used to listen to that in Iowa.
He said he was heard in 38 states and half of Canada, and it was one of those blowtorch 50,000-watt AM radio stations that at night you could hear it everywhere.
And he was kind of a stereotypical abrasive sports talk guy, right?
Yeah, and he'd hang up on guys and kids, and that was your Pete Franklin?
Yeah.
No, and I called him many times, very nervous, and was hung up on by him. So I've always tried to be nice to the caller just for those reasons, because I knew that I remember being on the other end.
Of course, you guys never take calls.
Well, yeah.
That's part of the reason. We have acquired from you some early video of a Dan McDowell-hosted talk show. Take a look.
Baby, welcome back. Welcome back to ABC 33's Movie Madness. I'm Dan McDowell with Big Jim Wilson, and one of our favorite callers back on AM 1440, Mr. Football. Yeah!
Yeah, that's...
Clearly your career had progressed quite a ways by that time. What's this all about?
Yeah, that was pre-HD, of course, and this was actually, they let us host a midnight movie on New Year's Eve in Youngstown, Ohio, when I worked over there. And this was a bit we did about, I was coming back. My playing career had ended in Little League football, and I was making a comeback at the age of 29, I believe it was. And look at that hair.
Yeah, that is very strong. I hate that my managers are seeing this segment, because I have a feeling I know what story I might be shooting next week at this time. Grandpa Ducey comes back and tries to make a comeback. You also tried some stand-up.
I look exactly the same.
Yeah, some stand-up comedy. How'd that go?
Not good. I was not good. I am not a good stand-up comedy person. I think it's very difficult to go out there and try to say the exact same joke in the exact same way to a drunk crowd. It's terrifying. It's very hard. You know, here we can pretend lots of people are loving what we're saying. They're probably not. They're probably turning off the TVs. They're probably booing, but we don't hear that.
Well, it's one thing playing to a drunk crowd in here, but, you know, in that other setting. I wanted to get your list.
Is anyone drunk? Tuesday night, are they drunk watching us? Probably.
I would guess there'd be a few people who are enjoying themselves right now in that way. I wanted to get, as a sports humorist, your list of your top stand-up comedians. It is a difficult craft, but I know one that you admire very much. Let's take you through your list and explain why you like these artists so much.
Margaret Cho, come on. Of course, because of the leather pants that she once wore and her hilarious bit about the fact that oftentimes you'll see a hot Asian woman with an ugly American man. Isn't that funny?
And edgy. Number 3, what's the deal with Jerry Seinfeld on your list?
Okay, I didn't know you guys numbered him in this way. Jerry Seinfeld, he's just the best, right? I had to put him on there because he's Seinfeld, and I grew up every Thursday night, right, watching Seinfeld, getting baked with your buddies in college, and watching a little Seinfeld.
All right, we've touched 2 of the bases. Now Dave Chappelle at number 2.
He had a really funny bit about how white men often will date Asian women, and oh, it's hilarious. You should watch him.
Would it be possible to reference Asian women one more time in this segment? And as though it can't get any more uncomfortable, number 1.
Ah, yes.
Louis C.K.
Are we still allowed to say he's funny or no?
You are. Go for it.
You know, I didn't put Cosby on there, you know? So Louis C.K. is funny. I don't know if it's funny when he does certain things with other comedians in their hotel room and won't let them out of the room and then threatens to ruin their career if they let anybody know. But the stand-up part.
You want to take a wide shot of me distancing here? This is me distancing right
Which
now.
Which camera do I look at?
There's Dan over there at the desk, and this is
He's funny.
Standing over here. P1s
his stand-up. You asked about his stand-up.
P1s have a lot of questions for Dan McDowell via Twitter. Does he have the courage to answer them? We'll come back with more with Dan McDowell from The Ticket on Free for All after this. Back with a very edgy Dan McDowell from The Ticket's Bad Radio. He's a big fan of Fox 4 News. You guys talk a lot, Jake especially, about our social media segments here
That's
on our
right.
newscast. So, Maestro, if we could hear the Your Turn music, please. If we could fire that up.
Love when we turn it over to the viewer.
There it is.
You know, who's better at programming than the viewer?
That's kind of how we roll. It's, you know, sometimes it works better than others, but I know you are fascinated by Clarissa's Your Turn segment, keeping in mind that she is a DFW treasure.
She's a Hall of Famer.
Celebrating her 40th year at Fox 4, and a close friend of mine who could end my career at any moment if she so chooses. Feel free to continue this segment with Dan's version of Your Turn.
That's right. I don't have the arm strap, but let's see. Oh, can Dan try on Mike's hairpiece so I can imagine a young Dan again?
It's one of the
That
questions.
hair is beautiful. It is great.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's not.
How did you do that? Is it the fake hair that Witten is using?
It's not what it used to be. There's a lot of gel in it. You can pull it if you want, but it's...
no, it looks, you can see the scalp and everything.
That's close enough.
I can't read with glasses. That's the difference.
And you can address camera one if you want to look directly.
Camera,
camera
okay.
one if you want to look. Here's Your Turn question number 2.
What is the difference between a chickpea and a garbanzo bean? I can't do that here on Fox 4. That's ridiculous. Oh, Mike, why wasn't Mike fired for refusing to interview Jerry Jones?
Well, that's a good question. I actually got a lot of support from my management here at the station for that very difficult decision.
That
I had
was
to
a
make
difficult
that
one.
night at training camp.
We spent a lot of time on that.
And I
the next day on our show.
Self-promotional aspects of that. Yeah, thank you very much. But, but it was a journalistic decision, don't get me wrong.
No, that's, and I know that you've probably never been asked before to not say certain things. Preference indica, sativa, or hybrid? That's a question for Mike.
I don't understand. I honestly don't understand what that means. I have a feeling I know what it is.
I think it's like a pot thing.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not sure.
Wild
you
guess.
know? Yeah,
Wild
just guessing here.
I drive a hybrid, but yeah.
Yeah, that's all I got.
That's it for Your Turn?
I think is.
See, there's more, it's more difficult than it looks, isn't it?
It's really not easy at all.
Smarmy about social media, yeah, but here we go. We got 4 minutes left to fill here. And,
do we really?
Questions? No, we have other stuff.
Oh, do you ever have cake for breakfast?
I don't know the reference there. I saw that on Twitter. Can we talk about what that refers? Or
I believe that's just a drop on the ticket, a pre-recorded drop where somebody once mispronounced a word. You know what they do on the ticket. It's
drop.
hilarious.
They love those drops.
Yeah.
I asked for Twitter questions for our guest tonight as well.
Oh.
And here we go. The first comes from Aaron. Aaron asked, is Dan humbled or blessed by his appearance on Free for All?
I'm very humbled. Humbled to be one of the, what am I, the 8th ticket guy you've had on? Boy.
See, that would be the correct you. You guys talk about this, right?
Yes.
How the word humbled is used incorrectly.
When somebody's elected to the Hall of Fame, they're, I'm humbled to be surrounded by all these Hall of Famers.
They mean to say they're honored.
Yes, or blessed. Blessed might be a good one.
But in fact, humbled means that you are made to feel smaller by something that you've done.
Like, you know how Dez can't get a job in the NFL? Humbled.
He is very...
That is humbling.
Very humbled by this.
Camera 1.
The ratings for this show tomorrow will humble me a great deal. Dan has lost a lot of weight. Second question comes from Omar, who asks, Dan, tell us about your training regime. How's the quest to run a marathon in a month going?
I have had a long time wanting to run a marathon in a month, which means like a mile a day, and I've never done that. But because a lot of people call me the LeBron of sports radio, I'm following a LeBron diet where he just cut out carbs for one summer. And so I'm kind of cutting out carbs. I don't eat any non-natural, or I don't eat non-natural carbs. I don't eat synthetic. I eat potatoes or rice or whatever, but I don't eat pizza
so you're not loading up on sandwiches
or
that kind of stuff.
Right, I don't eat bread.
You're not a big cookie guy anymore.
You know, still enjoy my ice cream.
How much weight have you lost?
I had just a few pounds, not that much. Seriously, I don't know. I'm down to 200 or 205. It's great.
All right, we're not talking about specific weights here tonight. I need to work on it. And finally, number 3 has to do with a pastime that Dan alludes to as being one of his favorites. It comes from Courtney, and the question is this: what is your favorite?
You're airing that one?
What is your favorite?
You're putting that one on there. Why?
I didn't really know what it meant, so I thought I'd ask you. Is there a particular? Nah, we don't. You don't have to.
That's in Texas, none of them, because that would not be legal,
That is
Mike.
the correct answer.
That is right.
Ding, 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 ding.
We're having fun here, no?
There we go. All right. Dan McDowell, weekdays, noon to 3, with Bob and Jake.
Look at my hair.
Bad radio, looking magnificent. Thank you, my friend.
That it? We're done?
We're done.
Let's take some calls.
Perhaps forever.